So when we're aiming for full awakening in order to be of the greatest service to all living beings, there's two basic ways of being of service. One is to help sentient beings in samsara, and the other is to help them get out of samsara. Samsara being this cycle of uncontrolled rebirth arising due to ignorance, afflictions, and polluted karma. And so benefiting sentient beings while we're in samsara involves, fulfilling whatever physical needs they have: food, clothing, shelter, medicine, befriending them, counseling them, doing social activism, things that make the world a better place. Also, like the sur offering that we did, making offerings of aroma to the beings in the lower realms who are suffering due to lack and so on. So this benefits beings while they're in samsara. It alleviates their temporal pain while they're in samsara, but it doesn't directly lead to their awakening. Yeah, it can, create the conditions for them to meet the Dharma, because as somebody brought up yesterday, when people are hungry and impoverished, difficult to meet the Dharma and practice it. But, so these things may give them the conditions they need in this life, but it doesn't directly lead them out of cyclic existence. The other kind of aid is, helping beings obtain definite goodness. Helping them, let's go back to the temporal one, when they're in samsara. That can include benefiting them in this life. It can also include helping them to learn about karma so that they will avoid negative actions and create virtue, and thereby create the cause for fortunate rebirths in the future, and avoid creating causes for suffering in the future. So that is definitely a step up from helping them just have the happiness of this life, because you're that's having a dharma motivation to at least help them to have happiness in future lives. Yeah? And that too can, for some beings, it just helps them stay out of the lower realms. That's it. That's all the benefit. For other beings, by them having a precious human life, then, maybe they can meet the Dharma and start practicing it. Okay? But again, it doesn't directly lead beings out of cyclic existence. When we help living beings, to get out of cyclic existence, we're really helping them towards their definite goodness, in the sense of actualizing true freedom, true liberation. Yeah? And so there you may also give food and clothing and things like that, but your primary thing is to give the Dharma and to give to do activities that help to spread the Dharma and help living beings to be able to meet the Dharma. Yeah, and they say that the giving of the Dharma is the highest gift. It's the best form of generosity. So, people in the world may look at us, like we were discussing in the discussion group yesterday, and kind of say, you aren't helping anybody at all. What are you doing? But from the viewpoint of, past and future lives and being trapped in samsara and aiming for liberation and full awakening, then what we're doing is considerable in the sense of enhancing our own abilities to be of greater benefit, and then, being able to benefit others more so that they can achieve definite goodness. One of my teachers wrote me a letter once I should try and find it so I have his exact wording in it. But I was in retreat at the time, and he wrote, and he said, what you're doing, your practice and studies and everything, is of greater benefit to sentient beings than what Mother Teresa is doing. And it really kind of shocked me, because I'm sitting here and my mind's completely berserky and crazy and full of garbage, and and I have so much respect and regard for Mother Teresa, But then he went on to explain that, what she's doing is benefiting people in this lifetime, which is certainly noteworthy and praiseworthy, but she's not able to benefit them toward, in terms of leading them out of samsara. Whereas when we practice Dharma, then, it's going to take a long time, many lifetimes, many eons, but as we progress, we'll be more and more capable of being of the Dharma benefit to living beings. And that has a longer term effect and a broader reach. Okay? So it's not saying that the first kind of generosity is unnecessary. It's certainly quite important, Very, very important. But it's also presenting another kind of generosity that is important in a different way, that is not so noticeable to people who don't have a worldview that, consists of rebirth and samsara and enlightenment and so on. Yeah, so that's why, you get remarks when you go to work like, yeah, you spent the whole week looking at your belly button. What good does that do? Well, of course people are going to talk like that. That's according to their worldview. Yeah, but we have a different worldview, and so our priorities are different. So today, I always start EML with telling the story of the Buddha's life, because it started with the Buddha, and because I feel that the example of the Buddha's life our lives are analogous in many ways to the Buddha's life, to the situations that he encountered, the experiences he had. And so there's many ways of telling the story of the Buddha's life. Jetsun Kusala, when she was here this past weekend, was talking about how his mother dreamed that, an elephant was coming into her, and how he was born from her right side, and then took 7 steps and said, "This is my last rebirth," and lotuses, kind of blossomed where he took his 7 steps. So there's that way of telling the Buddha's story. Personally speaking, that for me personally, that's very sweet, but that doesn't help me have faith, because the religion that I grew up in had lots of miracles in it too. So if miracles were what gave me faith, there would be no reason to really seek the Buddha Dharma. Yeah. So somehow miracles never quite did it for me. But I respect the fact that for other people it can really encourage their faith and devotion to the Buddha. So I'm not criticizing that, but just simply saying I'm not going to tell the story in that way. Okay? I'm going to tell the story in terms of how it influences me personally. And I remember specifically when I went to Taiwan to take the full ordination, the temple that I was staying at, and the inside and the outside walls, they had pictures of the special events from the Buddha's life. And after lunch, we were all supposed to lie down and sleep. I never sleep in the daytime unless I'm sick. So I had to lie down, so when they came by and I would pass inspection. But then, because if you weren't, you got scolded and told to lie down. But sometimes afterwards, when I could, then I would get up and I would circumambulate the temple and just kind of reflect, looking at each panel and event in the Buddha's life and reflect on that. And it was really kind of a meditation for me that helped. I already had a strong determination to take the bhikshuni ordination, but this really increased it, very much. So I usually start, you know how the Buddha, after he was born, then his father had a fortune teller, a soothsayer came, and who said, well, your child is either going to be a great worldly leader, or a great leader in the world, or a great religious figure. And so Dad, of course, said, I want my son to be a great worldly leader. I'm the king. I want him to, kind of go in my footsteps. I don't want him, looking at his belly button all day. And so, when you think about our lives, we were all born in families where our parents had hopes for us. And they had dreams, how they wanted us to grow up, what they wanted us to be. And most often they wanted us to have and be and do everything that they weren't able to in their lives. Yeah? So whether we wanted to have that or be that or do that was irrelevant. They wanted us to have, be, and do that because that was their view of what happiness was. And more than anything, parents want their kids to be happy. Yeah? So they had these, they had their lives planned out for us in advance. So according to the families we grew up in, and their values, and and the situations they were in, and the cultures, and so on, we had some similar expectations and some different expectations of what we were supposed to be when we grew up. Okay? Yeah. So, so it was similar with the Buddha. And so, the Buddha the whole time when he was a kid, he did what Mom and Dad wanted, because that's what kids do, unless they're kind of rebellious. But, he was taught what success was by his parents, and the whole society around him gave him the message, you're going to grow up and be a great leader. And of course, he excelled in everything there was to excel in. Yeah. So he looked like the perfect worldly person that, Mom and Dad could go, our child, we're so proud of him. Right? And, but there were also a few little cracks in the story. That when he was young, he sat under a rose apple tree and went into samadhi. Yeah? That I don't think that was in the plan. I don't think Mom and Dad kind of knew what to make of that one. And then there was the time when his cousin Devadatta shot down the swan and claimed the swan for himself because he had killed it. And Siddhartha said, went to rescue the swan after. Well, actually it wasn't, he didn't kill it, he just shot it down. Siddhartha rescued it and said, it's mine because I rescued it. And actually the judges sided with Siddhartha. Yeah. In our country, I'm not sure what they would side with. Yeah. Yeah, but so he had some kind of extraordinary compassion there that wasn't always shown so much in his peers. And he was very sheltered. Many of us may have come from sheltered backgrounds, and I think all parents shelter their kids in certain ways. In some ways they may not shelter us, but in other ways they may shelter us. Yeah? And so they don't want us to see anything ugly. They don't want us to have any danger or any fear. Yeah. And, of course, some parents are able to control their children and their children's environment more than other parents are able to. So regardless of our parents' capacity to control the environment or control us, inside their hearts, what they want is, I don't want my child to have any fear. I don't want them to ever be in any kind of danger. I don't want them to get hurt. I don't want them to see anything ugly that's going to freak them out. Yeah? So they want to shelter us from the bad stuff in the world. Yeah? So it was, that's what the Buddha grew up with too. Just everything beautiful and luxurious all around him. He had some feeling that this wasn't the whole scene, though. Again, there were cracks somewhere. He had some idea that what I'm seeing is not exactly the full story of what life was about. So he did what many of us did in our teenage years, is he snuck out behind his parents' back. And did you sneak out sometimes? Or did you, maybe you went out with your friends, but once you were with your friends, you did other things that, weren't on mom and dad's agenda for what you were supposed to be doing that evening. Yeah, because we wanted to see what life was about, and we wanted to, get the full story. So, Siddhartha did the same thing. He snuck out of the palace. Yeah, can you imagine what his father would have done, what his mother would have done if they caught him? Yeah, if the police called and said, "Your child, we caught your child," sitting in the back seat of the car with doing So, but he had some kind of urge there to see what was going on. So, so he snuck out. And so the first time he went out, he saw a sick person. And he had been so sheltered that he had never seen somebody who was sick before. And so, of course, he asked his charioteer what was going on. And his charioteer explained, that our bodies get sick. And he said, "Does this happen to everybody?" "Yes, it happens to everybody. This is the nature of having this kind of body." And so that was rather surprising to him, and, really made him think. And and so in our lives too, sometimes, when we're young, we go out, we see people who are sick. Remember the first time you go to the hospital to visit maybe some relative, and it's kind of scary, you see sick people. Or you're traveling, in India, and you see sick people in the railway station. You see dead people lying around. The second time he went out, he saw an aged person. So somebody completely bent over, hobbling along with the cane. Our society, again, puts those people away so we don't have to look at them. Yeah, they're in nursing homes or retirement homes or assisted living, where maybe we go a couple of times, whenever it's convenient to say hello to our parents or relatives. But have you ever been in a nursing home? A nursing home are very different than assisted living communities and retirement communities. Nursing homes are, I worked in one the summer of my freshman year in college. And so you see people locked away and old and ill, and how the relatives kind of ignore them or come once in a while. So they have their physical suffering, they have their mental suffering. They know death is in front of them, and most people don't have any kind of spiritual view that will help them face death. Or even if they do, still there's a lot of fear in about facing death. So that's what Siddhartha saw the second time. The third time, he went out and saw a dead body. Yeah, our society makes dead bodies look so nice. Yeah, they embalm them. Even if they don't embalm them, they put makeup on them, something, so that they look quite nice, which is not how they looked when they actually died. My father died, just about 6 weeks ago, and I mean, this story is like right out of the Lam Rim. Because there's a whole section in the Lam Rim that, well, I'll tell this story again Friday, but anyway, you'll listen. I'll tell it now too. You'll hear it again. It's on my mind. There's one part in the death meditation that the time of death is uncertain, and that even things that are conducive to life cause our death. So my dad his 93rd birthday was June 25th. So June 24th in the evening, my sister and her 2 kids and her boyfriend and his 3 kids had like a little party to celebrate Dad's birthday. And they made Dad's favorite food, and were so eager to see him being very happy. So he cut into a piece of steak and swallowed it and choked. And within minutes was dead. He choked, turned blue, fell off the chair. They tried to do Heimlich's. They couldn't get it out, and he was dead. Like that. Yeah? And my sister was telling me it was just to see his dead body, because she said his lips all turned blue and got quite swollen. And, of course, the face turned gray, and his belly bloated up, and everything was gray and blue, and really kind of freaked her out. So much so that when, I wasn't there when it happened, so when I went down, I wanted to, be with his body. And my sister wasn't sure if she wanted to go in and see it, because she thought it might look like it did when he died. I went. It looked like he was sleeping, and they didn't even embalm it, because in Judaism they don't embalm. But he just looked like he was sleeping. So I said, "Come on in, Robin, it's okay." Yeah? But I was so shocked. Yeah? My mom, when she died, she didn't look so good, They tried to make her look better, but, she didn't look so good. But, death is very much hidden from us in our society. I remember as a kid, there was a forest lawn, Forest Lawn, Memorial Park, cemetery. You're looking like you don't know. Oh, maybe it's just a California thing. It's a chain of cemeteries and things, and columbariums, where you put the ashes, and cemeteries, and they several years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, they wanted to change their image, so they opened an art gallery in it. They opened a place for picnics and a garden. Yeah. So, cemeteries are made to look quite beautiful in our culture. Yeah, at the time of the Buddha, they would just, sometimes people were impoverished. They just died where they were. I mean, when I went to India, I saw many people just dead in the railway station, or on the streets. But then they would take the body, in the time of the Buddha, and they just threw it in a charnel ground. That's it. Maybe put a piece of cloth over it, and that was it. And the animals came and ate the bodies. Yeah, so, he went outside and he saw death, and that, again, this happens to everybody. There's no way out of it, no matter who you are or how much wealth you have or whatever. This is how we all wind up. So it really made him think. I mean, he was a sensitive young man, and it made him really think, what is the purpose of my life? Yeah, I have all this richness, all this wealth, all this success, worldly success. He was bright, he was athletic, he was handsome, he was, you name it. And he's saying, okay, I have all this, and, or so, what does that do for you in the end? Huh? Then the last time he went out, the fourth messenger he saw was a wandering mendicant. Yeah, so somebody who had gone forth, who had left the family life. We call, when we ordain, we say we're going from home life into homelessness. Yeah, so you become a wandering mendicant. And again, he asked his charioteer what that was about. And, that's somebody who's looking for a way out of samsara, looking for a way to solve this whole dilemma. So that really set him thinking too. And I think all of us, in one way or another, we had our own four messengers that set us thinking about the meaning of life and the purpose of our lives. Yeah? So it might have been different things for each of us, but certain events in our life, or it doesn't have to be one event that got you thinking. It could be a whole situation at the time that got us thinking about, okay, you can get all this worldly success, but you're still subject to birth, aging, sickness, and death. And, there's somebody else who's trying to remedy that fundamental suffering, that fundamental problem we have of getting born and dying. And what in the world are they doing in their life? Yeah, so it may not even have been Buddhists that we saw. We may have seen somebody from some other religion, but just the fact of somebody being dedicated to religion, So it's interesting, to think a little bit about what your own messengers were that got you thinking in life. Yeah, I know for me personally, because I grew up during the Vietnam War, that was a major impact on me. Yeah, it's like we're being told that we're fighting and killing people to live in peace. I saw some of my friends go off to war, and some of them come back in body bags. And I'm going, what? What? This doesn't make any sense. To kill people to live in peace. And why are these young people getting sent over there? And why are they dying? And why are they killing people they don't even know? Who also came from families who are not the government, And I just thought, why don't the leaders of the country get in a sandbox and fight it out themselves like a bunch of kindergarten kids and leave the rest of us alone? Yeah? I mean, the whole war made absolutely zero sense to me. So personally speaking, this was a messenger, It was like, what's going on here? Yeah. I grew up during the time of, the civil rights movement. Yeah, and Mississippi burning and the Watts riots and, Kent State and everything there. And again, going, what is this about? Why are people judging people based on the color of their skin? It makes no sense to me. Yeah. And I grew up in the shadow of the Holocaust, so that imprint was quite strong with me about, people being judged from being in certain ethnic groups or racial groups or whatever. And it's like, why? Yeah. And then the women's movement was just starting when I was in college. Again, why do people judge other people based on the shape of their body? I'm not my body. What's going on here? Yeah? So I'm just giving you some examples. But, maybe we can talk about this in the discussion group. What, for us, were the messengers that got us thinking about, what is the meaning of life? What is this all about? What is going on here? Okay? And, when I think about, what was the fourth messenger for me? What got me interested in spirituality? And that was, I tried the religion I grew up in. That didn't do it for me. I went to other religious things. That didn't do it for me. Turned on, tuned in, and dropped out? So, became quite cynical and hedonistic, and that didn't do it for me. And I remember one time being we went to see some friend who was in a Catholic hospital, and I remember when we were leaving there, I was quite young, thinking, wow, there's these nuns. And this was, when all the nuns were wearing habits. Yeah. So, wow, they're dressed like that, and they're totally devoted to their religion. Like, what is that about? I mean, I couldn't resonate at all with their religion, but just the fact of somebody being devoted to something and committed to something like that really struck me. Yeah. But aside from that, the idea, the wandering mendicant, that fourth messenger was not really prominent in my life. So I stumbled around for quite a number of years until, I met the Dharma. But, for each of you to look in your lives and what was the sick person? What was the old person? What was the dead person? What was making you question about society? And what, gave you some sense that there was something more to life than basically replicating our parents' life? Yeah? So, So you're getting a lot of my generation in here. So Venerable Tarpa and Venerable Samtanel understand. Remember the movie The Graduate? You guys have seen it? Really? Yeah? Yeah. So, so that movie just, was like, really resonated with me big time. Yeah, in fact, I remember one time, I'm telling too many stories, but anyway, so I was stoned and I went to some party at my parents' house, and I was talking with their friends, and I had just, I think, graduated, and they were asking me what I was going to do, and I said, I'm going to investigate plastic. Anyway, yeah, so, I think it's an interesting reflection to look in our lives, because very often there were things that happened that really made us start thinking. And sometimes the people around us did not want us thinking like that. They discouraged us from thinking like that. As long as I'm telling stories. It must have been in what year? Maybe 1966 or 67. So it was, so I was going to the high school prom. And a couple of days before the prom, the war started. Another war started. A previous war started in the Middle East. And, I think this was the 6-Day War. Yeah, it wasn't the Yom Kippur War was in 73. So this must have been the 6-Day War. And again, this feeling of, wow, there's a war, and there's all these people killing each other, and they don't even know each other, and yet they're sitting there shooting at each other, killing each other, taking away each other's lives. For what purpose? And I felt like, how can I go to the prom with my boyfriend and have a good time when this is going on in the world? Yeah. And so I told my parents I didn't want to go to the prom. And they said, what? Like you've got to go to the prom. You're going to go and have a good time. There's nothing you can do about the war. So don't think about it. Don't worry about it. Don't think about that time. Just go to the prom, have a good time. But not too good of a time. Yeah. But, so it was very much, the message was, don't think about this. Yeah, you can't do anything about it. The world's problems. So useless to have any compassion, any thought, anything about it. So, there may have been things in your life, too, that you questioned, that you wanted to know about, that society or your parents or your family just said, forget it. Yeah? So it's interesting to think about this, because I think this is very involved with our motivation to ordain. Yeah? What is it that got us questioning life? Because that's where our motivation to ordain started from, with that questioning. That what was being presented to us was not satisfactory, was not satisfying our own inner questions or our own inner longings. Yeah? And there was definitely that inside of us when we were young. Otherwise, we would not be here today. Yeah? So what was it? And how did we deal with it? And how did, society, react to our questions and our searching? Yeah? And then what did we do? In my, like I told you, I went around, tried these different Judaic Christian things. None of them satisfied me. There were no other alternatives. So I just became totally atheist and hedonistic and, spent several years being really cynical when I was in college. But those questions never went away. Yeah. So, these were the same questions that were plaguing the Buddha. Our experience, the Buddha's life, our life is analogous in many ways to what the Buddha went through. And so he was having so many questions and doubts that he just said, I can't stay in the kingdom and fulfill my parents' and society's expectations, because there is something much more pressing, much more important to do. Yeah? And so especially, there was his child had just been born. It was a son, so, in those days you all wanted sons, and he had a son, and he was, there was the big fest with all these beautiful dancing girls. And, but in his mind, he's thinking about, what's all this about? And then at the end of the party, all the dancing girls just kind of crashed where they were. And he looked around, and, all these beautiful women, were like drooling and snoring. And, you know how people are when they sleep. Yeah, they don't always look so great. And, arms and limbs, just all sorts of ways. So... so he just said, I've got to leave. I've got to go forth. I can't stay. I cannot stay here and be true to myself. Yeah? If I'm really going to be true to myself, I can't stay and do this anymore. And so he left in the middle of the night. Yeah? And he went out when he got a good distance away from the palace. He took off his finery. He put on the saffron robes of a wandering mendicant. Took off his jewelry. The reason the Buddha is depicted with long earlobes is because he had such heavy earrings when he was a prince that it made his earlobes long. Okay? Took off all that stuff, gave it to his charioteer to take home. And then, there's one picture of him with a sword. They didn't have, hair clippers. With a sword cutting off his long hair. Yeah? I mean, that picture is just like, and he's saying, I'm done. I've got to find a solution to this. This is too pressing. And so he went forth, and he left, and that was it. And of course his charioteer went back, and, the palace, everybody's crazy, where is the prince? And, well, he left, and he cut off his hair, and he gave back his fine robes, and he's flipped out. What happened, Like, we should take him to EMR and stuff him full of some kind of drug and make him be normal. So, yeah. I mean, nobody was very happy with him. But he went forth because he had to be really true to himself. And then, he went from... just as we often go from one Dharma center to the next, kind of checking things out. So he went to what was available to him. So he went to one teacher who taught him, the jhanas, and he attained, I can't remember which state. Yeah. I mean, definitely the fourth jhana, maybe the first of the formless realm absorptions. I can't remember. But he mastered that, and the teacher said, you're my star student, I'll share the leadership of the group with you. Yeah? Now, what do you think about that? Boy, your teacher says you're my star student, and you can be a teacher, and I'll share the leadership. Wow, I'm a big shot now. I'm important. I cut cut it, and I got my diploma. Okay, and I'm an important figure now, equal to the teacher. Yeah, but he didn't fall for that. He didn't fall for it. He said, thank you so much for what you taught me, and I've got to go on. So then he went on to another teacher who again taught him the concentrations, and this time he actualized the meditative absorption all the way up to the peak of samsara, the highest type of meditative absorption. And again, the teacher said, you've actualized it all. You're my equal. Share the leadership of the group with me. And so can you imagine, if he wasn't sincere, second time around, yeah, getting this kind of status, sure. Yeah, but again, he turned it down because he knew in his heart of hearts that he wasn't fully awakened yet. And so he went on. And so in those days, there was a great movement towards asceticism. This idea that, and it's very much in our culture too, particularly in Catholicism, pre-Vatican II Catholicism, this feeling that the body and its urges are evil and sinful, and you've got to tame them by torturing the body. Because pre-Vatican II they had the, what did they call them? Self-flagellation, to beat the lust out of yourself, and did all kinds of ascetic and, self-torture things, jumping in the cold sea. I remember in Ireland reading about some monks that went in this, the sea and freezing temperatures to, overcome the attachment of the body. So this was a similar kind of movement in the Buddha's day. So he met 5 friends, and they all went off together and practiced these kind of ascetic things. And he, for 6 years, he ate 1 grain of rice a day. So he got very thin, so thin that when he touched his belly button, he felt his spine. Yeah, and he looked really haggard. And, and then he had to confront the truth of that type of practice too, that making the body suffer did not tame the mind. Yeah, that taming the mind is something different than making the body suffer. And so, again, to be really honest with himself, he had to say to his 5 friends, this isn't it, and I'm going. And his friends are meanwhile jeering and saying, oh, you're such a softie, you're going to go eat and drink and make merry, and what are you doing? And, kind of really thought he was a big flake. Yeah. But again, he went forth. And then there's the beautiful story of him sitting and meditating under the tree. And Sujata, one of the village women, thought that he was a god from the tree, and came and offered him, porridge. And this is why in the Tibetan tradition, on special occasions, they serve rice with sugar and butter and raisins, because in ancient India, this was a beautiful offering that you make to the gods, and that's what Sujata gave to Siddhartha at that time. Yeah, and so he ate it and regained his strength. Meanwhile, his old friends are calling him names, and then he crossed the river, symbolic, going across the river, the Narayana River, which is now dry. Yeah? But Bihar, the climate in Bihar is very different now than at the time of the Buddha. Yeah? So, but he crossed the river, and then he went and sat under the Bodhi tree. He made a cushion of kusa grass, and sat under the Bodhi tree, and then said he wasn't going to get up until he had liberated himself. So he sat there and meditated, and as we all know, all hell breaks loose when you meditate. Yeah, you're waiting for light and love and bliss, and all hell breaks loose. Isn't it? Yeah? All these things you haven't thought about in years come up. You're sitting there, you get furiously angry remembering something somebody said to you years ago. You're so furious. And then you hear ding. And, oh, wait, I thought I was back there with that person again. What am I doing here in the meditation hall? Yeah, my samadhi was on the wrong object. Yeah, so this is what happened too when he sat down. All hell broke loose. So of course, first were the weapons, right? Or were the dancing girls first? Well, the dancing girls first? Okay. So the dancing girls, all Mara's daughters. Mara is the personification of, everything that's taking us away from the Dharma. So all these beautiful women are there flirting with him, praising him, everything you ever wanted, like Buddha boy finally showed up. And, Buddha girl, Buddha whoever, whatever your sexual orientation is, that person finally showed up, and not just one of them, but the sky full of them, and they're so attractive and sexy, and they're praising you, and they're vowing never to leave you again because they love you so much. And, everything you always wanted in a relationship is there multiplied by countless. Okay? Yeah? And so he sat there and looked at all of that. Yeah? And said, okay, and so what? Yeah? Okay, and so what? What's this going to do for me? Nothing. Zero. Finished. Yeah? And so then all these beautiful women magically aged. Now the people get younger looking. You go for your Botox and facelifts, you get younger looking. There they aged really quick. They all became hags, and they slunk away. Yeah. So what this is symbolic of is, we all have craving, don't we? We all have clinging and attachment, and it's ridiculous to think we don't. And, there it is. And we've got to face it and deal with it. Yeah, we can't ignore it. We can't stuff it down. We've got to look at it with wisdom and see that it's all completely an illusion. Yeah? And so that's what he did in his meditation. And that's why, as the story goes, they transformed into hags and left. And then, then the macho, we're going to fight thing, Maybe nowadays all the football players come out in your meditation and you're playing football with them and you're going to win, or whatever your thing is. But, anger comes up, doesn't it? So it manifests, for him, incredible warriors and people threatening him with weapons and calling him names and, going to kill him. And so, there is, whoever your enemy is, multiplied, again, by countless. And again, just as all the beautiful women were manifestations of his attachment, all this violence is manifestations of his anger. Yeah? And so, all this craziness and war and violence and suspicion and horrible words and deeds and actions going on. And again, he sat there and said, okay, so what? I'm not biting the hook. This is not what is important to me. I'm getting involved in honor battles and proving my strength, and this is not what it's about. And so, as he worked through this in his meditation and released his anger, then all their weapons turned to flower garlands and rained upon him. Okay? So, again, just like us, isn't it? Yeah? Do you have meditation sessions completely taken up with fantasy attachment? Never. Yeah? We have whole meditation sessions, in order to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Ding. Due to this merit. What merit? I've been in La La Land for the last however long, yeah? And do you ever have meditation sessions, again, completely filled with rage and anger? You're with friends, you know? We're not the only person this has happened to. You know, whole meditation sessions filled with anger, yeah? Or filled with self-pity, or filled with self-loathing, or filled with jealousy, you know? So, yeah, it's just like, what... And have you ever noticed how your meditation sessions, you play the same videos again and again? Yeah, the same video, the same anger video, the same jealousy video, the same nobody loves me video, the same daydream of perfection video. You know? Same one, again and again and again. And we never get tired of it. But you think it's the same video. You know, it's like, how often can you watch this until you just get so bored? You know, I mean, sometimes we tweak the ending, you know. Sometimes we're on the beach, sometimes we're at a ski alpine place. You know, we always wind up in bed. But, you know, the getting to bed, the whole thing, kind of, you know, different stories. Yeah? But, like, then, so what? You know? How many times have I done this? In reality, how many times have I done it in my imagination? And where's it gotten me? Yeah? So, I mean, these are the exact same things that the Buddha went through, and, you know, the story compacts it all into one night. Yeah. You know that a lot of it happened, you know, he did a lot of work before he got there that one night. But with us, you know, it may take more than one night, it may take probably more than one lifetime. But that's okay, we're going in a good direction. Yeah. And then at dawn, he awoke as you know, he was fully awakened. You know, the idea is that ignorance is like sleep, you know. When we're sleepy, we can't see clearly, can we? You know, the mind's obscured. So he awakened from the sleep of ignorance. And then he went on to teach. So that will be tomorrow. We'll talk about what he did when he taught.
What it meant, like better ball and chain, basically. Whenever I hear that, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Makes sense. You want it out.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know, when you have a child, your child is the embodiment of the perfect person you wanted to be and never could be. Yeah? So it like, you put everything there. And then to see that as a chain. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you seen the film Samsara?
No.
There's a very powerful scene at the end. So the story is about this monk who leaves the monastery, kind of see what the lay life is all about. He's been a monk all his life.
Mm-hmm.
He gets a wife, he gets a child and everything. Then he sees all the downfalls and everything, and then he leaves. Then as he wants to return to the monastery, he crosses the river, kind of very symbolically regards it. Then his wife kind of, it's never clear if it's a mirage or if it's actually his wife, but kind of she tells the story of Yashodhara, of Buddha's wife.
Mm-hmm.
And the pain that she went through when the Buddha left, and I don't know, it's an image that kind of sticks with me now of, you know, and I think of course, you know, he went for the benefit of all entities, for sure, motivation, but then the pain that caused Yashodhara and his son, Of course, it's kind of an interesting to think about, what happened for his family and everything, as a result of
yeah,
things like that.
right.
I think they're all
Yeah, and so he left, and she was grieving, and the baby grew up without, had a grandpa but didn't have his dad there, and so the immediate image is of, our mind says he's causing her pain. He's a deadbeat dad. He's walking out on his child, and he's causing his wife incredible pain and torture. But then time goes on, and what happens? Yeah, did they show that in the movie? What happens? What happens in the Buddha's life is he goes back to Kapilavastu as a monk. This is years later. He goes back as a monk. And, and at first his father's going, and then finally, decided to offer him food. And there was a whole reconciliation with the family. Yeah. And his father, took refuge. His son eventually became a monk. His wife became a nun. His stepmother was the founder of the Bhikkhuni order. Yeah. So in the end of the day, there was that pain on separation, which is so illustrative of samsara, that whatever comes together in samsara must separate. So if, there isn't the separation because somebody, he's crossing the river and going back, there's going to be the pain of separation when somebody dies. But you cannot stay together forever. Impossible. Yeah. But in the Buddha's case, by him separating, attaining realizations, going back, he led his family on the path to full awakening. And then there were 500 Sakya men who ordained, and 500 Sakya women who ordained. 500 means a lot. Yeah? Yeah, that's what they said when they meant a lot. Yeah? Like we couldn't count them all. But because of what he did, something really good turned out for the family at the end. Whereas short term, there was the pain. And that's a real grabber for us, isn't it? It's like, he's leaving her, she's crying, holding the infant. How can he do this? And then the mind goes back. They had such a wonderful relationship. It was so harmonious. They were so close. They loved each other so much. We totally forget all the times when they fought, all the times when they disagreed, all the times when they, were like fed up. But the mind instantly goes to this romantic thing of, they were the perfect couple and loved each other so much, and then he's leaving her. Again, look how our mind just daydreams. And, So what's going to happen? He's going to, the Buddha goes back and he's with Yasodhara. And then what happens? Yeah? Play out that scene. I knew, I'll tell you the story. When I lived in one Dharma center, there was one person, the director of the center, from a very well-to-do family. He was married, had 2 kids, and he kept on saying to his wife, I want to be a monk, but it's only because of you and the kids that I'm not a monk, but I really want to be a monk. So, and so she was hearing this for year after year after year. So she went out and got a boyfriend, and then he freaked out. Yeah? Somehow, what? Yeah, he was. Yeah? 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 But, So we think, oh, the movie perfect ending would be, oh, he decided not to cross the river. He went back to her, and they live happily ever after. Who lives happily ever after? Yeah? Do you know anybody who lives happily ever after? Did your parents live happily ever after? Yeah? Yeah? Did your parents live happily ever after? No? Yeah.
Well, I think in the film it's very different. It's kind of just non-committal spiritual type. It was more about responsibility, I think. Happily ever after.
Okay.
At least that's how I see it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That was my first reaction when I thought about him leaving this woman also. And then I realized she was a princess. He left her in power. And the child was a son, so he did his duty to provide an heir for the kingdom.
Yeah.
So, what kind of deadbeat dad?
Yeah. Yeah.
He left him in a really good situation.
Right.
He left him dead poor with nobody around to take care of him.
Right. I mean, she got alimony, didn't she? And child support.
She didn't need child support. She had to keep him going. This is my grandson. This is all I got left. And you're taking care of him.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't exactly leave her in a very bad situation.
Right. Right. She wasn't living in the intercity on food stamps. Yeah.